So, for first question was, how do teachers treat children differently in the classroom? So, teachers, they're more likely to call on, based off of this chapter, they're more likely to call on boys than girls, because girls, there's that expectation of femininity that the girls are quiet, they're assertive, like think about their answer. So, and boys, they just shoot out their answer, they yell out, they don't really raise their hand. And so because of that, that can cause a teacher to have more favoritism towards the boys, because the boys are seen as more interactive, and the girls are stereotypically seen as not as interactive to themselves. And this can also cause favoritism in the classroom, because the teacher will be more likely to call on a boy student than a girl student, because they'll know that the boy student is going to be more likely to answer their question, because they're more likely to shout out and be seen as quote unquote interactive. And I would say, like, basically how education has affected me, being a African American, girl, woman. Growing up at elementary, middle school, I went to predominantly white middle school and also elementary school. And so because of that, based off of the chapter basically said that, like, minority girls are the least to get called on. So automatically, like, I would always have questions. My hands would always be up for so long. And, when it got to a point when I realized, because my teachers were were white, almost, if not all my teachers were white. So once I started to notice a pattern that my teachers, they wouldn't call on me, most likely because of my race. And some teachers already even had a preconceived notion about me even before I stepped in their classroom. They looked at me and they already knew off the bat. Like, I remember I had a teacher who assumed that I came from, the ghetto, the hood. Like, I came from a rough background without even getting to know me. So, like, that also affected my participation in that teacher's classroom, because if you already have a preconceived notion about me, then, like, I'm not going to ask you any questions because you already have an opinion about me. That, and then I also felt like, because I was African American student, I feel like the teachers who had preconceived notions about me probably thought that I wasn't intelligent compared to my white peers. So because of that, like, I never asked questions, I never reached out for help. And then it also caused me to become independent in terms of my, like, education, in terms of studying, doing things. That's where my independence started from, like, starting out how to do things by myself, how to study by myself. It started there because I became so dependent on myself because I couldn't depend on my teachers for help. And I think that the stats, it does kind of align, like, and also it makes sense, like, how I've noticed, like, a lot of girls, a lot of African American girls, like, grow up and end up becoming so independent in their education, and they end up growing up not knowing how to ask for help because they weren't given the opportunity to, and they weren't given that free space to ask for help from their teachers, because their teachers already had ideas and stereotypes about them without even getting to know them as a student, like, on a personal level. So, yeah. And then the third question is, so emotional labor is basically like a kind of labor where you have to interact with people, you have to do, like, face-to-face contact, you have to talk to people, smile. And I feel like this kind of labor can be detrimental because you're expected to act a certain way in order to show your workers and customers that, it's the best job ever, I'm having a great time, and but also kind of, like, put this professional, like, mask on, like, everything is good, everything is great. And it can lead to burnout because it's unrealistic, because you walk into work and you have a bad, rough morning, then you're expected to smile and act like everything is okay. So, I mean, I totally experienced this because my first job was at Chick-fil-A, and I worked as a waiter and, a runner. I was running, like, food, and also I worked up front, and they were always like, oh, smile and everything. And there were days where I came to work and I had a rough morning, but I had to put on, a smile on my face, like everything is okay. And it was so unrealistic and fake, and I hated it. I did not like that job at all. And also, like, my managers were white, so they already had preconceived notions about me too. Like, they were always like, I need to smile. I always have a serious face, but it's like, that's why I'm happy, kind of off topic, with the job that I have now, because it's not really emotional work. Like, I do help people, but then also, like, I can kind of backtrack, have time for myself, and, like, de-stress. So, And also, like, women, like I said, women are also in emotional labor are expected to smile more and, present a more positive attitude than men are, which can be frustrating because it's like, everybody should be expected to do the same, not just the women. Like, and it can be very irritating. And so the differences between glass ceiling is the inability of a woman to catch up at the highest level of management because of some invisible forces holding her down. I think that glass ceiling can be so detrimental because it can prevent a woman from reaching her full potential in her job. So it's like you can't even see yourself going far because you're a minority or a woman, and then also not seeing people like in managerial or management positions like you. It's like it discourages you, and then it's like you don't even know if you even want to even go far because it's like there's no point because eventually something is going to stop me anyway. Because I think, being in a system where like a job system where like there's always something that happens when a woman or a minority wants to move forward, something ends up holding them back. And it's definitely something or some form of discrimination from the higher up. So it can, bottom line is, it can prevent like women or minority from reaching their full potential and doing their best at their job. And then the glass escalator is when men face invisible pressures to move up in their professions. And they're expected to move from their like the feminine low paying jobs to like the higher paying jobs that they're like stereotypically supposed to have. And I think that this also can prevent a man from wanting to work a job that he's actually passionate about because of subtle pressure and expectations. He's expected to have this job, he's expected to be a manager, a CEO, but it's like maybe like he doesn't want to. Like maybe the job that he has right now, he's happy with being a nurse. He doesn't have to be a nurse manager, or he's happy with maybe being a gynecologist. He doesn't want to, change specialties as a doctor. So I think that it can really prevent men from really doing what they're passionate about. And that can also affect like their work ethic and how they perform. Because if you're in a job where you're not passionate about it, you're less likely to perform. So, and then the sticky floor is women are stuck working long hours with small paychecks with little or no job options. And I think that this can prevent women from even wanting to even educate themselves, period. Because it's like, how can I have enough money to even pay for school, to even get a better job when I'm living paycheck to paycheck? And they can also prevent and like negatively affect like their finances as well in terms of saving. They won't be able to have enough money to save for their family, to save for like future things they want, maybe like a house or like a car. So it really can hold women back in terms of career wise and also financially wise. And it can also even affect the relationships in their homes. Like, like their husbands might complain like you're not making enough money, like you can't live off of one income. So yeah, and basically, so if I was given a talk to employers about gender work, basically like the three things that basically highlight and define the gender pay wage gap is discrimination, human capital, and organization of jobs. So the first one is discrimination. There's discrimination in so many jobs, and the gender pay wage gap is highlighted from discrimination. And there's already biases and things that basically like, there's the bias theorists who basically argue that, in terms of being hired, fired, and promoted, women are most likely to be discriminated against in those areas. And, there's even discrimination in terms of like women and men. Like women are expected to wear makeup. They're expected to create a professional like setting. They're expected to look a certain way, and men are supposed to just cut their hair short. And they're also you can also tie emotional labor like into this too. Like women are most likely expected to perform emotional labor in jobs, even though they don't even require emotional labor, but because they're a woman, they're expected to look pretty and smile and be nice. And then the second one is human capital. So basically, human capital is basically people invest more time and effort into skills that will help them move up the ladder. And there's basically like the mindset that women, they don't put as much commitment into their paid work. Men invest more time in themselves. So basically like the skills, like men invest more time in skills, and then so therefore they're more likely to move up because they invest more time in the skills that will help them move up, and women don't, that's the human capital theorist like mindset, and that has led to the gender pay wage gap. And then the last one is organization of jobs. So basically certain jobs are organized certain ways to kind of like maintain the gender pay wage gap. So for example, gender segregation, basically like there being more women's jobs, and the women's jobs don't pay as well as the men's jobs. The women's jobs are like nurses and like home care and like education, and the men's jobs like business and like construction, things like that. And also with like there's certain women's jobs that don't really offer higher positions. It's like very rare. So for example, like, you know, in the healthcare field, being a nurse, there's very rare opportunities for women to become a nurse manager. And if they even have the opportunity, it's like it's so hard. You have to do so many steps and so many things to become a nurse manager. So the job organization has purposely made it difficult in a way for a woman to do it, and a male nurse probably or most likely would have to go through less steps and verification processes in order to get that position. And so basically, paid work paid work is pretty much like work in everyday society, and then unpaid work is work that is you don't get paid. So women do more of unpaid work, which makes sense. Women are more likely to do housework and take care of the children and do PTA work. And paid labor isn't adequate in the household because women who work do more household work than men who work, which makes sense because especially married women, they're expected to work, then come home and cook and take care of the kids and clean and all those things. And then households are gender factors because in the household, women and men are expected to do so. Men are expected to do construction and maintain the garden and maintain, you know, the house amenities. And then women are expected to cook, to clean, to wash, to do laundry, to do shopping. And workplaces are gendered because women are more likely to do like invisible labor, and men are more likely to do work where they're credited for, and men are more likely to be credited for their work and women are not. So kind of like with PTA jobs, volunteer jobs, like women don't get credit for that. And it's unfortunate, and it kind of like, I think the basis of all this kind of goes to show how like there's still that gap there in terms of like gender pay, in terms of like, you know, in certain areas of society, there's still that gender gap there in terms of work and also like different factors and areas. And I think it all comes down to if there's a change in basically like the men, the higher ups, and with how those who run these organization sectors kind of like they kind of put gender aside and focus on like qualities. And I think that, you know, these things can change.